Looking to kick old habits to the curb? Number one New York Times bestselling author Jen Sincero gets to the core of habit transformation in Badass Habits. Whether you need to break them, make them, understand them, or stick to them, Badass Habits shows you how in a simple 21-day guide. Featuring Jen's hilarious voice, Badass Habits offers a much-needed fresh take on conventional wisdom. Badass Habits, with audiobook read by the author, is now available wherever books and audiobooks are sold.
Welcome to the Vibe Within podcast. I'm your host, Gab Cohen. Each week, we will connect through stories and conversations about wellness, yoga, addictions, spirituality, mental health, rituals, and everything in between. The goal is to transform our traumas into strengths to create the change we desire in our lives. My mission is to help others by shining awareness on real-life topics so we can learn new ways to heal physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Whatever you are going through in this moment, you are not alone, so let's connect and heal our vibe within. Hey guys, welcome back to the Vibe Within podcast. I'm your host, Gab Cohen, and I hope you guys are doing well out there. I am recording this intro the day before the election day, and I'm wondering how you guys are feeling, because I know that we're not going to find out who our next president is or what the results are on that day, especially because Mercury is in retrograde. There's been so many podcasts that I've been tuning into, mainly astrology ones, that have been talking about how it'll take a few weeks. I mean, and in reality, it should take a little bit longer than a day, because the entire country is, the voting ballots are going to be so much higher. The numbers are going to be so much higher, and the percentage of people who are voting at home and mail-in ballots. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm just thinking about what it's going to be like tomorrow, and whenever you're listening to this, we'll already be post-election. So whenever you're tuning into this, I hope that you can just remain calm, and that you have your practices and rituals that you can make sacred during your day, to keep you grounded and to keep you, where you're at. I was listening to the 10% Happier podcast this morning. That's kind of like my morning podcast ritual. He talks to really amazing meditation teachers, and he was explaining Jeff Warren was the one being interviewed, and their conversation was just really, really amazing, because Jeff Warren also has ADHD and ADD, and I definitely feel like I've developed some sort of ADD, and sometimes it is hyperactive. So I wanted to share just a few things that I got from that episode, and then we'll get into the episode today with Amber. But first, I wanted to share, he was explaining that his mind and his ideas and his thoughts would take him to this place where he was not accessible anymore. He was completely gone. And he said, that we get hooked in tangents, and these thought spirals, they take us away from the truth and the reality of things. And then he was explaining how his teachers and his mentors would try to get him out of these holes, and they would say, "Can you pop out of your obsession and come back and be with what's going on right now?" And I think this goes hand in hand with triggers, and triggers hit us like these. It electrocutes us, and then we act out of anger and shame and guilt and that trauma brain that is so engulfed and still stuck and sticky in the past traumas, whether they're small traumas or big traumas. So when we're triggered, we can often use our thought loops and going down the rabbit hole of what ifs and worst case scenarios, and I can't believe that they said this, I can't believe that they're treating me like this, I can't believe that they don't see it how I see it. And I actually yesterday I got a book from the thrift store for $1, and it's called Triggered. And I don't really go to this thrift store that often. It's like right down the street from me, and something nudged me, and I got a ping from my spirit guides or whatever, and I looked at the time and it said, okay, there's 30 minutes until they close. And I said, well, why not? 30 minutes, I can go in there, see what they have. I walked around and I was like, I don't really want clothes. I don't really want shoes. I have enough shit. I don't really like buying clothes anymore. I have plenty of clothes. And then I saw the book room that I never really noticed before. And it was this huge book room. There was one person in there, and I walked in and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I haven't gone to like a bookstore in forever. And I used to all the time when I was living in Philly. I used to go to Barnes and Noble all the time. And the last time that I went to a thrift store book section was in Florida when I was living with my mom, and it was the Goodwill, and I got like these amazing books. One of them is Getting the Love You Want, and it's like this really like well-known book about relationships and attachment styles and emotional trauma and healing. And then the other one was like this witch book. But so every time I go into like thrift store book sections, it's like Spirit knows to drop little goodies and gifts in those places, because the people who are shopping there are usually on, a budget, and books are such, oh my God, just books are such gifts. Like they're just like little goodies, like little glitter that like our spirit guides will throw into our life. And I think everybody who's listening right now can resonate with this. Like, during a time of your life when you were really struggling, did someone offer you a book, or a book just like landed in your path randomly, or you found one at the library in perfect timing, or somebody recommended a book and it's like exactly what you needed to hear, what you needed to read? That's Spirit like coming through and sending these messages and sending these gifts on our path, because they know that we need kind of reassurance and clarity. And so this book is amazing. And a couple quotes that I wrote down from this book that I started to read it last night, and it's one of those books where it's like I'm underlining and I'm highlighting like everything. And I promise I'm gonna actually read some of the book in an upcoming podcast. It's gonna be all about triggers, and I'm gonna dive deeper into that topic. So if you have any questions about triggers or any like subtopics in the triggered kind of realm, what triggers you, and maybe questions on how to get through it, I'm going to be reading this book, so I might have the answers. Who knows? But he said that triggers thrive on the illusion that we can't trust ourselves. And then he said, with strengthened inner resources, we find out we can trust ourselves indeed. So this book really puts into consideration that we do have the resources and the tools that we need. And it encourages us to look at our triggers and examine them and go into them with a sense of curiosity, rather than just allowing ourselves to be shackled to that trigger, and then we're labeling ourselves as that trigger, and then we're reacting from that trigger. It's really hard to separate ourselves from the trigger, but it is possible, and it really is possible. And this book is all about Buddhism and connecting not only spirituality and Buddhist approaches with meditation and practices like that, but it also connects neuroscience and psychology. So it's the trifecta of everything. And I also wanted to share something that I was listening to a podcast about how we can get caught in these like bad moods or these anxiety realms, and it kind of made me think about how we do have the access to inner rooms of joy and calm. So we have the keys to this room that resides within us at all times. So when we are experiencing a moment of like panic, anxiety attacks, we're triggered beyond belief, we're shaking, we're angry, we don't know how we're going to get through this. That energy is going to change. It has to change. So this practice to access this room that resides within us, and this practice is to remind us that we're safe in these moments of big T triggers and panic attacks. Because I used to have panic attacks growing up. These terrible panic attacks where it would be so confusing. I would feel it coming. I would understand it's coming, and then I'd be stuck in my body, and I'd want to jump out of my skin. And oh my God, it's really crazy, but I also think that it had something to do with how I was on a lot of like antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, and my body was like really not understanding what was happening, and it couldn't function properly. So what I want to say with this practice of accessing this inner room is that when you're having that moment of, oh my God, I can't believe that they're saying this, I can't believe that they're doing this, or you get triggered and you have a memory or a flashback hit you of a past trauma of when things went really wrong and you were unsafe and your whole world was flipped upside down, I want you to kind of hone in on that and be like, okay, well, what happened after that? For me, I can think back to when my life got pretty fucked up, and I got scammed by a real estate agent. She left me homeless, and I was, I had to leave my job in Miami. I had to leave my life. I had to give my cat to my mom temporarily, and then I moved up to Philly. And in that moment where I remember exactly where I was. I found out this real estate agent was stealing my money, and I wouldn't have a place to live. My entire body was activated, and in that moment I thought my life is going to be fucked for a really, really long time. And was it uncomfortable for a while? Yeah, it was. But that initial reaction and that activation of full body anxiety, panic, shaking, hyperventilating, that passed. And it passed within, 30 minutes. And I really had to remind myself that I was going to get through it. I was going to problem solve. I was going to figure out what I needed to do next. And even though I was in fight or flight, I did realize that this was a huge nudge from spirit and the universe that maybe I needed to go somewhere else. And I tried to look at it from a different perspective. So when we have these moments of anxiety and panic, how can we look at it from a different angle? Like, okay, is this trying to tell me something? Is this situation trying to tell me something? And if our needs aren't met, and if we feel like we're really unsafe, can we use the energy of anxiety and panic and examine it out of curiosity and use our inner resources, which is what this book talks a lot about, using our inner resources to metabolize that panic, that anger, that fear, that unsafety, that feeling, oh my God, like I'm not going to get through this, and remind the self that we can get through it and we can access that inner room of safety. When we experience like these really deep, high, unexplainable moments of joy, it creates a new space within the body and the mind that we can actually visit whenever we need to. So whenever we're in those stressful, chaotic, panic moments, we can access that place because we know it does exist. And it's accessing that secret room. We can close our eyes and we can remember a moment in our childhood that it's so nostalgic and happy. We can also remember a really terrible memory, and it can activate us in a bad way. So we do have the power to deactivate and activate our bodies and our nervous systems in a way so that we can kind of manipulate these moments of chaos and remind ourselves that we did get through some of our toughest moments, and here we are, we're going to get through it. And if we can just continue this practice of reminding the nervous system that we're safe, then the triggers and the triggered mind won't be dragging us on a freaking leash, because it's when the nervous system is activated, our heart's beating, we're shortness of breath, we're sweating, we're shaky, we're going to pass out. That's when we're totally gone. Our bodies totally take control, and our mind is like, but wait, but I've gotten through this before. But the body's like, no, we're dying. So you can get back to that place of safety and security. It's really hard. I know it is. It's not easy to just do it, especially when you're used to like having panic attacks. But, I know it is possible. So I recommend deep breathing, meditation. My meditation course is on sale until the middle of November, and I might just keep it on sale, to be honest, 30% off. It's got over 8 hours of guided meditations with binaural beats, journaling prompts, shadow work prompts, and just everything that I used and I did when I was in my dark night of the soul last year when I was living in Philly. I poured my heart and soul into this course. And a lot of you guys have really loved the experience. And again, and also, like, this isn't like your typical like workshop course. Like, this is more of an experience. There's also an audio yin yoga session in there in one of the meditations. So it's a guided meditation experience along with you being able to incorporate creative writing, creative journaling, and shadow work, inner child healing, trauma healing, all of that. So if you're interested in that, the link is in the show notes. So I hope that this little spiel of mine helped, because I know I've been getting really triggered recently with Mercury retrograde, Mars retrograde. Now we're in Scorpio season. It's just a very spiritually charged time, very emotionally charged time. Energy is high, energy is low, somewhat, energetically bipolar is how I feel a lot of the time. Like one day I'll be like so happy, so in the mode, so, gratitude, abundance, everything. And then the next day I'm just like really, really deeply depressed and angry and triggered. So yeah, I hope this helped. And now I want to get into today's episode, which is with Amber Romaniuk. I hope I pronounced her name correctly, but this episode is really going to be helpful for anyone who is struggling with disordered eating or just relationship with body and food and emotional eating. I mean, I think pretty much everyone in the world has some kind of weird relationship with food at one time or another. I'm not saying that everyone has eating disorders. I'm not saying everyone has disordered eating, but I'm saying, especially in our country and in the United States of America, there's a problem with food addiction, substance abuse, eating disorders, emotional eating, binge eating. It's all the same. It's all drugs. It's all ways to cope. It's all ways to get away from these dark emotions and trauma. So Amber Romaniuk is an emotional eating, digestive, and hormone expert. She helps professional women achieve optimal health through mindful eating, self-care, and overcoming self-sabotage with food. Her podcast, the No Sugarcoating Podcast, has over 500,000 downloads, over 200 episodes, and is listened to in over 82 countries. Amber overcame her own emotional eating after gaining and losing more than 1,000 pounds and spending over $50,000 on binge foods and spending 5 years balancing her hormones and digestion. She now helps others achieve body freedom so they can have the confidence and health to create amazing lives. So that's a little bit about her. If you're interested, her links will be in the show notes. And I know that you're going to enjoy this episode. It's pretty vulnerable, pretty raw, pretty real. I share some of my background history with binge eating. She shares the straight up the facts, the energetics, how to get through it, how to know our triggers, how to really get through these phases of binge eating, and how she recovered. So if you resonate with this podcast episode, feel free to share it with a friend or a family member. We're all struggling, and unfortunately, food and body is something that we all have these weird moments with. And yeah, I hope that you are having a beautiful day, and make sure that you take care of yourself and enjoy the episode. So we went from complete isolation with quarantine and um, needing to be in our homes and social distancing to a complete 360 into these peaceful protests and people obviously wearing their masks and stuff like that. But it is pretty ironic that,
Yeah.
we went from being completely isolated to people coming together and being very close together. And, people don't give a shit right now. It's just like,
Yeah.
you're gonna coop people up for so long. It's like it's bound to happen. But that is definitely crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, I th- I think there's a lot more going on than we realize. And I've definitely awakened a lot more to it all over the last 12 weeks, which I mean is a conversation you and I could have offline. But I
Hmm.
just think, from an intuitive, energetic standpoint, there's just so much going on. And I think that this, while it is a very vulnerable time to be here on earth, I think it's also a very powerful time because it's an opportunity for us while we are at home to decide, do I give into all this dynamic of fear, worry, panic, or do I use this time to do nothing, which is also a valid choice? Or do I see this as a time to, take better care of myself, work on my own mindset, get into better practices with ways to cope with stress? Um, because this is the thing at the end of the day, we are all connected. However, if we are in a constant fight and conflict with ourselves and we don't address that and take care of it, then we take that out into the world with us. And we're triggered more easily, and that fuels more reactionary, whether it's you look at someone and glare at them instead of smile because you're angry at yourself, right? And then you project that on someone else, or you go through the checkout till and you're short with somebody because you are upset because you binge ate, and then you're frustrated with yourself, and now you're projecting that on other people. And now we're seeing it to the point where people are so reactionary, and yes, they have every reason to be. However, how many people have been so deeply conditioned to judge others and judge scenarios and then just take action from that versus go, whoa, why don't I first address my own judgments of myself and my own criticism and learn to shift that. And once I do that, that completely changes the way people respond to other external scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah, and what comes to my mind after hearing you say that is that we've been at war with our bodies as a globe,
Yeah.
for however long with coronavirus, um, whether we want to admit it or not, because there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of fear, obviously built in layers with a pandemic. And even when things start to taper off and we feel more safe, um, we're still left with a lot of emotional wounds, which
Hmm.
go hand in hand with the work that you do, because it's all about, connecting with the body and nourishing the body on a literal level, on a spiritual level, on a mindful level. And, you know, that's why I wanted you to come on, because I mean the listeners of this podcast definitely know a little bit of my story with disordered eating and autoimmune, and you have a really great just raw and real way of you know dissecting what binge eating is, what disordered eating is, why, and how to navigate through it. So I guess that will will go right into my first question, which is the energetics of binge eating. Like, what emotions, what's the energy that is underneath binge eating?
That's a very good question. And I love that we're getting into this because, as we were talking about offline, this is a huge part that's missed. And I think it's missed for a reason because we are naturally spiritual beings. We are energy, right? Like we're vibrating at different frequencies. But where in school were you taught that? Where on TV are you taught that unless you're like tuning into some self-help or like Bob Proctor, somebody who's like a master at teaching this, right? Like it's not taught. So
Mhm.
I feel like, the energies that really impact binge eating are your low frequency energies. So as soon as someone starts to feel angry, frustration, fear, worry, sadness, panic, anxiety, feeling empty, feeling insecure, not feeling good enough, worried about what other people are going to think of them, judging themselves, fear of others judging them, um, or from a reactionary kind of energy when we see something in the news and then we react in panic and then we go, oh my God, I can't handle this. I need to shove this down with food. So it's a lot of low vibration energies. However, some people, because they don't feel worthy to be powerful and like super intuitive and high vibe and successful and have all these good things in their lives, they will get to a high vibration and that will feel so uncomfortable for them. And they will then sabotage with food to shove their light down and shove again and suppress their frequency down. And that will then, bring in more of those negative energies because now you're frustrated and angry because you gave in again. And so that can really fuel that vicious cycle of maybe you have all the intent in the world that you want to raise your frequency or like raise your vibration and manifest more and contribute to the collective and have capacity for yourself and then others. But if you're constantly in that cycle, you're shoving your intuition and your intuitive gifts down, which we all have. You're shoving down again that vibration, and it's really hard to get out of that cycle if we're continuing with the same habits and mindsets and we don't change those, because it really is our habits and mindsets that are dictating then the way that we behave with food in our bodies and our body image, that then contribute to our energies and our frequencies and how connected we can be or not. But there's a huge lack of worthiness thing there, and a lot of people fear that worthiness and how amazing it could feel because we're so taught to like focus on the opposite and focus on what we don't want. So it's almost like stepping out of a big comfort zone to become worthy, to become, more intuitive, to have a higher level vibration, and that you be worthy of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One thing I will say is when you're stuck in that vicious cycle, whether it is binge eating or drugs or substance abuse, because I mean, this is all connected. Your work is very deep seated, rooted into binge eating, but I've struggled with a nice variety of all the things. So I can say that when you're deep in that vicious cycle, when someone says, "Oh, um, this is why you're binging because of these emotions," it can sound really like, oh yeah, like whatever, it's easier said than done to just stop binging. It's like a drug addict, saying,
Mhm.
oh hey, like the reason why you are going to try and score some drugs is because of your childhood traumas and these emotions. Like they don't see it, they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. um,
Yeah.
which can be really, really debilitating at times. And, you know, especially in this space, in the spiritual space, like, like plenty of us are dealing with addiction, are dealing with eating disorders, are dealing with taking out self-medicating and taking out our anger on ourselves, and we're fully aware, oh, this is probably because of this trauma or this trauma, right? But it's so hard to get out of that vicious cycle. But in the work that you do, what would you say is like a pattern or a trauma that keeps coming up with folks who are struggling with binge eating?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, sometimes it's trauma, but sometimes it's also trauma and the conditioning from society, media, TV, celebrities, movies, music, etc., magazines. as well. It's that conditioning, like you should fit this certain mold, you need to look this certain way, and once you do, then you can have love, success, freedom, happiness, health, wealth, and all your wildest dreams will come true, which is such a false mold. And so something that I've been learning and really observing, especially over this last 12 weeks, as I've been more deeply waking up and connecting with other colleagues who are awake as well, is us talking about how much, especially the female population, has been made to be suppressed because we have the feminine essence, right? We have a deep intuition and a very deep inner knowing, but we can't access all of that if we're punishing or sabotaging ourselves, whether it be substance abuse or food or alcohol or whatever it is. We suppress that part of us and it makes us feel more powerless. And instead, we're then distracted with fighting with our bodies and judging ourselves because we don't look like that photoshopped model or whatever celebrity it is. And then we just assume that because we can't get there, that it's our fault. We have no willpower. And then we keep going with the diet culture, and all that is, really hazardous to our health and our mindset. So regarding a trauma, one of the biggest things that I see is that the child observed their usually the mother, but the mother or the father would say to them and make comments about their weight, that they're too big, they need to go on a diet, and or the mother would be commenting on her own body image and saying how she hated her body or how she, kept trying to lose weight or was restricting, and then restricting the child certain foods for fear of the child gaining weight and getting judged. So that's a very common one that I see. But I think largely where that comes from is obviously the generational. Often, if the parents don't deal with it, they will innocently by accidentally pass it on to the kids. However, everything we watch, lots of the commercials and ads, magazine, there's no disclaimer saying we have completely altered this person's body to sell you a product so that you'll
Right.
buy it and feel bad about yourself and compare yourself and like, what I keep giving your power away. You don't see any of that in any social media post, magazine, commercial, right? That's like, so this conditioning is there. Like you think of how many movies are centered around like the popular pretty girl who has like the perfect quote unquote body, right?
Right.
Or you think about like most celebrities, like they literally, if you look at them, a lot of them just don't even look real. I'm like, how does this person look this good? Yeah, okay, maybe they've had plastic surgery and blah, blah, blah. But like, it's just, it's taken us so far out of our reality and our essence, which is like unconditional love and loving ourselves no matter what. Like, we're so out of that. But when we're out of that, we're out of our power. And that's what makes the diet fitness industry trillions of dollars. And that's what makes people sick. And that's what makes a lot of these other big companies a lot of money. And so I think that it's so important to address the conditioning piece because it is a huge piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And then once you dip a toe into that conditioning, whatever age you are, it's a spiral, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just, spiraling down. And I can definitely relate to the what you said about, it starting with maybe a parent or the mother. I was never told, don't eat that or don't eat this. I was pretty petite, like as a little kid, and I danced for 10 years of my life from ages 4 to like 15.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the root of where my disordered eating
Mm.
came, because you're thrown into this scenario of comparing your body with
Yeah.
other girls' bodies before puberty.
Yeah. Oh
So,
God. Yeah.
um, so it's wild that, it didn't have to come from my parents. And
Yeah.
some people do say that disordered eating and mental illness, of course, is epigenetic, and but it does really narrow down to your surroundings. And you know I can say from my experience that as a young girl, I never felt comfortable through the transition of what puberty is. And
Yeah.
that's when um, all of these issues occurred. And, back in the 90s and early 2000s, thank God we didn't have social media. I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know how people are
Wow.
navigating through that right now, but um, I don't think that girls are prepped enough and told, like, your body's going to change and that's
Mm-hmm.
normal, and you don't have to stay small, and it's okay for your body to change. which is, you know, it's crazy that we have to say, we have to teach these kids that, but we have to kind of put in the energy because all the media and everything you're explaining is going against all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, I agree. I think that there's so many, like you talked about the dancing, and then there's the figure skating and gymnastics, and there's all these potentially great things that kids can get into. But the body image piece, it just, you know, they're told to look a certain way and be a certain weight. And I think it is a very uncomfortable thing to like go through puberty, and especially with no guidance and support. And my parents were the same. They never made any comments. For me, I was, you know, bullied on the bus when I was 5 and called ugly and fat. And that was by a bunch of boys. And that was really a hurtful moment for me that defined the next 20 years of my life. But I think, you know, now, especially to a social media, I mean, here's a prime example. You look at all the filters, right?
Yeah.
So now you can put on a filter. You can be the 6-year-old girl going on Snapchat with a filter, and now you have a full face of makeup, or now you look this certain way, and now you start to become conditioned that this is what you should look like all the time, like through a filter, right? And we see these people evolving and growing up, and then them taking this picture of them with this filter face to a plastic surgeon going, hey, can you make me look like this? Like, that's how skewed
Yeah, it's
it
insane.
has become. And that's why it's so important, I think, that I mean, I'm not a parent yet, but very strong boundaries with technology. Like, why does a 10, 12-year-old need to have any of these apps? Like, to me, I don't think that it makes sense. And it's because they don't know how to navigate it. Like, it's just such a slippery slope. Yeah, I get, you know, the kids are going to have technology. However, I just think very strong boundaries have to be developed and set, because otherwise you don't know what your kid's getting into and finding and how that's influencing them. Um, I think it's also really important that we acknowledge, you know, disordered eating to me is a very heavy term, and take it for what it's worth. You know, whoever is listening, that's I find it creates attachment, because it's like it almost sounds like it's a permanent diagnosis. And I
Mm.
really don't believe anything is permanent unless we believe it is. And that's where I really like to go more toward, you know, this emotional relationship with food in your body, whether it's restriction or it's like I'm binging, I'm emotionally eating, I have a food addiction, I eat compulsively,
Mm-hmm.
because I find it just helps you to go, okay, well, you know, I just feel like the word disordered, it just essentially is like, hey, there's something wrong with you. And I hate people thinking that there is, because there isn't. It's
Yeah.
that there's been so much stacked against us. How is it possible to think that you could, you know, get into all this and then just be able to fix it really fast? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it feels so heavy. And so that's where I go, you know what, you have this emotional relationship with food in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start exploring why, because there's many reasons why, and there's nothing wrong with you, and it's not your fault, right? Not that
Yeah.
we blame others, but just to help take that load off.
Yeah. And like, I love talking about this because a huge thing that we talk about on this podcast is like how we can, yes, like be aware that we have depression, be aware that we have anxiety, but we don't need to like identify with that
Yeah.
and be like, this is who I am, and walk around with a sign saying I am a depressed person, and or I have an eating disorder, because then that puts you in this energy of, well, from now on I have to tell this to everyone, and if they can handle it, then they'll be my friend, or they'll be my boyfriend or girlfriend, which is, I've found myself in this in this headspace, which is not funny. I'm just laughing because it's so true, and so many
Yeah.
people are stuck in this headspace of saying, well, I have this problem, and I have this trauma, and I have this mental illness, and I have an eating disorder, and I'm, if someone can handle me, then I'm worthy of being their friend or their boyfriend. And that's just so
Yeah.
not fun to live in. And it's like what you're saying is so like refreshing, because it's like, okay, instead of saying I have an eating disorder, which very well may be true, like, hey, cool, I was diagnosed with one when I was in high school, but now I'm in a completely different season of life. I'm 30 years old. I would never describe myself as the same way that I was in high school. So why should we have to label ourselves when things ebb and flow? And we can say, instead of identifying with a mental illness or binge eating, I've been resorting to a negative coping mechanism that I'm ready to release.
Yeah, or self-sabotage. Oh, there's my self-sabotaging mindset. There's my ego, because that's really what this is, this behavior. Live in an ego-based society, but that one of the laws or dualities of the universe is good and bad, light and cold, right? Dark and white. And so we have an ego. It's part of our duality. However, we have been so taught to give our power away to other people and this duality. And now I think there's a powerful opportunity for us to learn how to take our power back, which is, you know, working on food freedom and a healthy relationship with our bodies and food, and self-acceptance, and understanding our hormone and digestive issues that may be fueling cravings and binging, and to just go, you know what, maybe this has been in control for a really long time. However, at any point we can choose to want to take a different path and start the healing process. I really think everyone is worthy to heal. It's not certain people that are special. It's just finding the right support, finding what resonates with us, and really taking our time to step into that deeper work, which is the mindset work, the spiritual work. But it comes in layers, and we have to take it at our own pace and not expect a quick fix to change it, or that in a few months from now it's all going to be resolved. I
Yeah.
think it's so important to honor how long it's taken to get us to condition to this point, and that it's going to take time to change that. But the beauty is as you do, you get through the layers, you release a lot of stuff you've been suppressing, and you really reconnect with yourself. Our self-love, confidence, kindness, gentleness, all of these good things are within us. It's that we've just been distracted and disconnected from them. But we
Yeah.
have them. We just need to find them again by going within.
Yeah, and there's so many different techniques and ways and practices to heal an addiction or a disorder, and it's not just one size fits all type
Mhm.
thing. And binging can actually, like in my personal experience, um, the seasons of my life, I feel like I've had 10 lives in one life. Um, but the binging part of my life was definitely linked to my drug use and binge drinking.
Mm,
And I'm sure people can resonate with that because now I'm 1 year sober. I'm 1 year no alcohol, no drugs. And
awesome.
binging is not even, I don't even think about binging anymore. It's
Mhm.
like not even a part of me because it just doesn't really like there'll be times that I eat too much or whatever, but not binging. And I feel
Yeah.
like it was directly correlated to the lifestyle, the breakup, the drugs, the drinking, the filling the void, and
Mhm.
that lack of control. So when someone comes to you and they are struggling with, let's just say, binge eating or any form of disordered eating, or maybe bulimia, maybe they're over exercising after they're binging, what's the first kind of steps that you take with them to navigate through that first layer?
Yeah, so once we first connect and just talk about where they're at and where they're wanting to go, and once I go over how I can support them if they decide to proceed with that, the first step is definitely really understanding their current state of health. And I mean like physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, if they're aligned with that. It's important to understand all those pieces and understand what kind of relationship they have with food, what kind of way have they been behaving with food. They have food fears? Are they in detox addiction, exercise addiction, orthorexia? Understanding that is really important, and understanding for how long, and maybe if they're aware of what's triggered it, where it came from, the body image piece and the relationship they have with their body, how they're currently eating, as well as understanding their physical health symptoms, because there's a lot of physical health symptoms that can fuel cravings and binge eating or emotional eating. And so it's important to also understand that, because the binge eating, any form of emotional eating, it has a significant impact on our physical state of health and our mood, of course. So, dealing with gut issues and bloating and gas and irregular bowel movements. I see a lot of adrenal fatigue and high cortisol and thyroid imbalances and high inflammation. And so, understanding all those pieces is really important for me, because I want to be able to support this person not just physically or emotionally, but both. And then as they open up on the spiritual level, then we can, do more work there. But that's really important because I need to understand all this stuff first, because then I know which priorities to start with. And usually it is starting to identify those, binge eating triggers, emotional eating triggers. What's triggering you to go to food? And there's so many different ones. But as they can start to become aware of what's triggering them, then I can start to introduce some tools and coaching around, based off your triggers. Let's explore why this is a trigger for you, and let's get you to start to interrupt the pattern, because you have to remember, every time we go and binge or repeat the same pattern, we're creating a stronger habit or neural pathway in the brain, which is essentially a habit. And so in order to weaken that, habit in the brain, we need to be able to recognize, oh, I'm feeling triggered. So before I just go to food, I need to stop. I need to understand what's triggering me and what's really going on, because when we do that, we also start to question and go, what does it cost me to keep going to food? Like, what does it cost me emotionally, physically, with my health, financially, to keep spending money on this? You know
Exactly.
what I mean? And so that's really important for people to start to understand, to take responsibility. I guess that's the key here, is that whole process helps people to stop and start taking ownership.
Right, like that full awareness. And like, I mean, it's hard because people with autoimmune disorders, for example, like Hashimoto, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto in February, and I am not your typical patient, because a lot of Hashimoto patients are middle-aged and overweight and fatigued and sluggish, and I'm quite the opposite most days. I mean, I do have energy to work out or whatever, but I teach yoga, but it's kind of hard to decipher, like, which came first, the chicken or the egg. Like, are the symptoms of an autoimmune disorder coming up and triggering the binging, or is the binging creating the side effects and the symptoms? Because binging comes
Yeah.
with a host of, obviously, indigestion, bloating, distended stomach, and
Yeah.
it can lead to all these GI problems, and it's like really hard to put a pin on where it's coming from. Like, what you're saying is super interesting. So my question is for you, like, people who are experiencing like ravenous binging. And so I don't know about you guys, but it seems like the older I get, the more of a tomboy I become. But at the same time, no matter how tomboyish I feel, I still need quality makeup. And I definitely still want to feel glammed up, especially during the holidays. Even if you're alone this holiday season, it doesn't mean you have to just hang out in your pajamas. You can still dress up, you can still put on makeup and feel good about yourself. Thrive Cosmetics is a new beauty brand that I discovered, and they have high-performance, award-winning products that are both vegan and cruelty-free. And as you guys know, I'm vegan, so that's kind of important to me. I don't want to be putting, products that have come from an animal on my face. It just, I don't know, just kind of grosses me out when I think about it. But I like to keep it simple, especially since I'm still healing my hormonal acne. And what I do love to do is always enhance my eyes, because it always makes me feel good when I just put in a little bit of effort into my eyes. And a lot of you guys have actually commented on some of my pictures of my eyes. I've always been obsessed with mascara. I've always been a mascara junkie. So when I found Thrive Cosmetics, I was really, really happy with the mascara they have. It's the award-winning mascara, and a lot of the holiday sets right now actually come with a free tube of it. It's called the Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara, and honestly, this mascara it's bomb. I mean, I think the main thing with mascara is that the brush needs to be legit, and this is like a really, really nice brush, and what it basically does is it makes you look like you're wearing kind of fake lashes, but they look natural. They're flake-free, smudge-free, clump-free. I love it. The packaging is really nice and sleek. And I also like the Brilliant Eye Brightener, which is really, really easy to use. It makes such a huge difference just by putting it in the corners of your eyes, and it just brightens up your entire eye. And that's all I've been using recently is just the eye brightener and the mascara. You know, if I'm just like running errands, or if I'm going to the grocery store or whatever, this is a very simple way to brighten up and enhance your eyes. So if you're a mascara junkie like me, definitely give Thrive Cosmetics a try because you will absolutely love it. And with every purchased product, Thrive Cosmetics is helping women in need to thrive by donating funds and products. I really like that. I feel like we need to be more mindful of where we're putting our money and our energy. So start thriving and help women in need today by going to thrivecosmetics.com/vibe for 15% off of your first purchase. That's Thrive, CAUSEMETICS.com/vibe for 15% off. Thrivecosmetics.com/vibe. Like cravings and uncontrollable eating, would you say the majority of that comes from hormonal imbalance?
No. So there's many facets of this. The hormones are just one piece. So there's really 5 planes of manifestation. So the first, and if we don't address, the first 4, then it ends up manifesting into a physical symptom. So the first plane of manifestation is spiritual. So if we do not address what's going on spiritually, which a lot of us don't because we're not aware, then it will hit us energetically and our vibration will drop. And then we get into that low mood, right? So the fear, worry, panic, anxiety, anger, frustration. And so the vibration drops, and that makes us more susceptible now physically to bacteria, illness, acidity, stress in the body. And so, however, if we do not address on an energetic plane, which again, a lot of us are not aware, then it really impacts the mental, emotional. So the emotions I just talked about. And the more we, here's an example is anxiety. So say you're always stressed out and so your cortisol goes up really high, and that's the stress hormone. And the more stressed you are, the more cortisol you produce, the more cortisol you have in the body. And eventually that produces anxiety because you're so overwhelmed and so stressed. You're suppressing the emotions with the binging. And when we suppress something, our body starts to have a very strong fight or flight response, which is that anxiety. And then if we don't address it at that point, the last plane of manifestation is the physical, where then your energy gets really low. You gain the weight in the abdominal area. You're craving more carbs or salt because you're now depleting your minerals, and your blood sugar's off because you're binging and then restricting, or you're really stressed out. So going back to like the chicken the egg thing, I really think that with that plane of manifestation, the physical symptom or the diagnosis, it didn't just come out of nowhere. It didn't just come, because you have bad luck or bad genes. Genetics play a role, but with epigenetics, your cells are listening to your thoughts. What you focus on, you manifest or you create. And then stress, environmental factors like heavy metals and toxins and poor food quality. It all then plays a role on the physical symptoms. But for me, hormones are one potential reason why people binge, but what I actually see plays a huger role is the old conditioning of eat less and exercise more. A lot of people are not eating enough. They're restricting calories, and therefore their bodies aren't satiated or satisfied. They're not eating enough fat. They're not eating enough protein, or they're completely restricting healthy carbohydrates. But there's some form of restriction that is throwing their blood sugar way out of whack, which again really stresses the body out and can fuel the cravings. Or they're not eating, through half the day and they're surviving off of caffeine and sugar. They're fasting. Again, they're doing restrictive things that really throw the body out of alignment. And then the cravings come on so strong. The hunger comes on so strong to the point where you're like, oh my God, I need to eat the first thing I see because I'm starving.
Yeah. Oh my
And
God.
then
Yeah.
the binging just hits so hard. And then every time you do that, you're more inflamed because you've hurt your body, and your digestion is more agitated, and then the cortisol goes off. And every time we binge, we throw our blood sugar off more. So something really interesting from a primal state. So from the caveman days, we were programmed to go out and, forage and eat as much as we could because we'd store the excess as fat. And just in case we couldn't find food for, days or weeks, we would survive. So every time, we ate in the caveman days, our body would make up, more room so that during our next meal or the next day, we could eat up to 40% more. However, now in, today's society, food is everywhere and we're eating multiple meals a day, which of course is, I think, what our bodies need. However, when we're binging and then your body is programmed from those primal days to go, oh, well, now we're going to open up and increase your appetite levels so that you can eat even more because there must be a famine coming. And
Mm-hmm.
then that can, skew your blood sugar even more. Your appetite levels increase. And this old programming really is now not working with this behavior because you don't want to eat more. You don't want to give into the cravings. However, part of that's that primal programming. And the more refined foods we eat, like refined sugar, aspartame, they increase our appetite levels. They make us crave more sugar. They throw the blood sugar off so much so that you're so addicted that you can't stop eating them, right? So that's another piece that really fuels the overeating or the binging, is that the food has been designed to be addictive so that we lose control and keep spending money on it and keep fighting with our bodies.
Yeah. Okay. Holy shit. There's a lot that I want to unpack there because you just said so many amazing things that really hit home with me. So basically what you're saying is that yes, it can be physical, it can be hormonal or whatever,
Yeah.
but majority of the time it's like a ladder. Like when you were explaining
Mhm.
that to me, it's like, okay, like can we climb down the ladder and see what the energy is that's creating the anxiety and then creating the discomfort and then creating the binge. So that's really nice to visualize. And then what you were saying about like people who are like over exercising and restricting.
Mhm.
I was caught in that cycle, and I still tend to believe that I'm caught in that cycle due to how many allergies and food sensitivities I have now, which, to be honest, if I'm being completely honest, I did to myself because after years of restricting and years of drug use and binging and whatever, um, I think that once the body is goes through so many years of that, that's probably what triggered my binge eating, is because
Mhm.
I went through so many years of starving myself. And then what happened was, yeah, my hormones got all messed up because I was on birth control, and then I took myself off birth control, and then the host of symptoms, and
Mhm.
just that's when the health journey really took a hard turn. And it's interesting because what you're saying is, even though you're restricting or you're overworking out, you can gain weight. And it really, so I was listening to this podcast the other day with Alyssa Vitti, who wrote Woman Code, and she was saying, like, one of her clients, she was training to do a triathlon, right? And so this woman is like running 20 miles and whatever, and she gained 20 pounds when she was training for this triathlon. She was like, I don't understand what's going on. And Alyssa Vitti was like, it's because you're energetically holding on to literally everything that you're putting in your body. So for someone like that, what would you do to start to heal the body? I mean, other than stepping away from high intensity workouts, for someone whose body is just holding on to dear life, everything they put in their body,
Mhm.
what would be your kind of go-to protocol just to kind of navigate through that?
Yeah, so we really then have to understand and see weight as a protective mechanism. It's a symptom just like bloating, but we've been conditioned that gaining weight is bad, right? It's shameful. You're lazy, all and all the judgments associated with it, which are truly not the case. It is really a protective mechanism. People put on weight when their bodies don't feel safe. It's just that we don't know how to listen to our bodies. So it's to actually get curious and take a step back and go, why do I think my body doesn't feel safe? Why is she hanging on? And so some of the most common things I see are the restriction with food, definitely the over exercising, not getting enough sleep, right? Because then you throw your whole meridian clock off. it impacts your hormones, your blood sugar, and you create more inflammation. It creates a state of stress. And the more inflamed you are, the more water retention you hang on to. And that really makes the body not feel safe and want to hang on. Food sensitivities, gut flora imbalances, adrenal fatigue, high estrogen, underactive thyroids, all of that can make the body want to hang on to protection, because those all, contribute to slowing the metabolism down. And it's really hard for our body to want to lose weight when there's all these other things going on. Also, if someone has such a deep rooted limiting belief of I can't lose weight, no matter what I do, I can't, do that, their body will hang on until they can get into the subconscious and really shift that. And also address, different emotions and things that have been suppressed. That doesn't mean you have to sit in all your stuff forever. I think there's great tools that can help you release stuff from the subconscious mind without having to sit deep in it again. However, I think it's so important to understand the physical imbalances that can be contributing. Again, if we're in a low vibration all the time and we're really stressed out and we're in negative self-talk all the time, your body sees that as a threat. And here's the irony: your body unconditionally loves you. It's just that from a mental standpoint, you've been conditioned to be at war instead. And then again, from the spiritual plane, maybe in a past life you were a starving prisoner. I was a starving prisoner in a past life. So no wonder I wanted to binge and make up for lost time. So
Wow.
you have to understand that there's these different pieces that come into play, and that can really make your body go, I just don't feel like this is a time for weight loss. Especially the more we force it, the more the body resists and goes, no, my last two priorities when I'm this stressed out are, getting pregnant and losing weight. They really get pushed to the bottom of the list. And something that I've just discovered from an energetic spiritual standpoint is, light workers, we like to hold space for others. And you have to remember, if we are this mass of energy, if we take on a bit more density, right, or weight, we can hold a bit more space for other people. So it can actually be a mechanism that helps you in your abilities to honor your needs emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and then honor other people's needs if you have capacity. However, if you are trying to hold space and heal a bunch of other people and help them, and you're a people pleaser and you're giving everything to them and depleting yourself, your body will continue to hang on to that protection and potentially put more on, because you're not filling up your cup first, if that makes sense. So this is where addressing hormones and the people pleasing, overbooked schedules, stress levels, the relationship with food, the gut health are all really important. And once I understand those pieces of the puzzle, then I can work with that person to help them balance their hormones, undo old limiting beliefs around, weight and struggles with that and low self-worth. We can get the inflammation out of the body, relieve the food sensitivities without restriction, balance the gut flora, and have them really shift to taking care of themselves, making themselves a priority, getting the sleep they need, and honestly taking care of what are basic needs. But we've just stepped so far away from, what is really important for us, which are those things. And as they do that and they start to feel better physically and emotionally, they take the pressure off of needing to be a certain weight. And I find that it's actually the bonus of doing all this other work is that when you focus away from weight loss and you really focus on getting healthy on all these other levels, these 5 planes I've been talking about, any protection that your body doesn't need will fall off without you having to lift a finger. And that's what happened to me after binge eating.
Exactly. Right.
I had horrible hormones, and I had a limiting belief of I need to exercise to lose weight or maintain weight. And the irony was I was gaining weight like crazy, and I was back up to my peak that I was in the midst of my binge eating. But I had the estrogen dominance, the underactive thyroid, and the adrenal fatigue, and the exercise was just the tipping point. And so I
Mm-hmm.
quit the gym, really focused on balancing my hormones and really nurturing myself, and it fell off. 40 pounds just fell off, and I literally just slept and took care of myself, and I didn't diet or do anything like that. And it blew my mind, but I needed to go through that to see, no, this is not about eat less, exercise more. It's BS. We need to come back. We need to come home to ourselves and really understand the roots and not stop focusing on the weight loss. We all have a natural set point. Our bodies will get back to that when we come back to ourselves.
Yeah, it's it narrows down, and everything that you're saying points me to, well, it's all stress related. That's where autoimmune comes from. That's where gut issues come from. That's where hormonal issues come from. And yeah, some of it's physical, but it's all stress related. And everybody that I talk to who says, if you want to heal your adrenal fatigue or you want to heal your Hashimoto, then you need to like really rest, like, and make that like hyper focused on that. And telling someone like me who is like, the past 10 years of my life was just go go go, fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
I moved like 10 times from ages 18 to 29. um just constant stress, like literally. And now that I'm looking back at it, it's like, oh well, yeah, no shit, you were your highest weight when you were binging and you're doing this and you hated your job. And it's just like such a downfall of things. And I think that people who are struggling with binge eating, um, it's a hard pill to swallow, but um, understanding that it's not physically based is actually kind of nice, and it takes off some of the pressure,
Mm-hmm.
because then you can say, okay, well, then I am in control. Then I am in control because my mind can actually, um, we can change what mindset we're in. It just takes a little bit of tweaking. Um, and like, years and years of me, starving myself, and what you're saying with the negative self-talk, I didn't know any of this stuff when I was 15, 16,
Me
17. I mean,
neither.
nobody was talking about this stuff then. And I remember, talking to myself so badly, like, you fat fuck, like, I can't believe that you gained
Mm-hmm.
weight. I can't believe that your thighs are this big, like seriously, seriously, disturbing things. And I'm sharing this because I know that I'm not alone, and I think that people need to hear that, like, it's okay to recognize these
Mm-hmm.
things. And I talked to myself like shit for probably a decade of my life. And now I'm sitting here freshly 30 years old, like, wow, I've been around the block. I feel like I've been in the ringer a few times. So it's
Yeah.
like, it's definitely stress related. And I'd like to kind of shift into, relationships, because we talk about relationships a lot here on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really challenging for me, in my experience, um, I'm not struggling with binge eating, thankfully, but, I do, from an outside perspective, still struggle with disordered eating, or just, weird ways of eating, or orthorexia moments, because when you have Hashimoto or autoimmune or Crohn's or any of these autoimmune illnesses, IBS or whatever, you have to be really careful and hyper aware of what you're putting in your body. And it can kind of trip you up and make you feel like you have some serious issues. Like, how can anybody deal with me? I'm so crazy with the way that I eat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's a roadblock, and it creates a plateau, for me at least, when I'm, whether it's finding a romantic fling, or, just, dating apps and whatever, or meeting friends. It's like, food and and nourishing our bodies is a huge part of life. And I remember when I was living with my ex-boyfriend a few years ago. I've been single now for like 3 years, and I'm really happy. But when I was living with him, he would not understand the way that I was eating. And it was like, you know it's triggering to eat weirdly, and to be judged, and to navigate through relationships, and share your history with disordered eating, or share your physical issues with someone. Like, it's hard to 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 meet a guy or a girl who you're interested in and be
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I have IBS and I shit like 20 times a day. you know
Mm-hmm.
like, how do you navigate through that?
Well, I think the key is to really, as you're working on yourself, you're going to attract and reflect people of alignment. So if you're in deep judgment of your own symptoms and your own relationship with food in your own body, you're going to attract other people who are also very judgmental of themselves and you and not understand. So the more you work on yourself and shift your mindset and your body and have compassion, even if you're having symptoms, you will attract others who are more understanding. For instance, my boyfriend and I have been together for 4.5 years, although we met 5 years prior to that when I was super in my food addiction and super superficial, and he had his own things that I didn't know about, and we were mirroring each other, however, and it didn't ended up working out because neither of us felt good enough. Fast forward, the first time I came over to go on come over and make dinner for him, nothing in the cupboards, like one vegetable in the fridge, a crappy knife in the cupboard, and I'm
Oh
thinking,
my
oh.
God.
But I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just like bring some of my world here and see what happens, because if he loves it, great. If he doesn't, then this isn't meant to be, because I'm not gonna change who I am for somebody else, but I'm not gonna like drop it all on them at once, right? So,
Yeah,
but it was
yeah.
great because as I, came around more and we, spent more time together, he was loving all this great food, and like, he was starting to feel better, and all of a sudden he got like a knife set and brought all this stuff into the house, and it just like
Aw.
evolved, and now it's to the point where he's like, I don't ever want to change, the way that we eat. We eat so good. He's like, I've never felt so good. I feel more confident in my body, and like, you know, certain symptoms he used to get, he's just not getting anymore. And so I think you really, if you're with the right person, the aligned person that you're meant to be with, you will grow together and you will be open and supportive to each other's aligned habits. And if there's a habit that's self sabotaging or not aligned, there's an opportunity for you to support the other person in that, unless it's something very severe, which is like threatening your, life. But I think that's just so powerful, and we just grow together, and we're very spiritual as well, and that all came out in the wash as we got deeper into our relationship. And there's never any judgment about body. Like, I love myself, he loves himself, and so we can bring that mutual respect into the relationship. I think it's so important that you bring love and respect and don't have expectation of the person or rely on the other person for your happiness. You have to fill that void yourself and create that for yourself, because once you do, you attract that. It's like once I loved myself and affirmed that and really felt it, boom, he came back into my life. And it's been like so beautiful ever since. But I did the work and he was doing his work, and it came back around. So I share this because prior to that, I was attracting guys who had drinking problems, who were very judgmental of the way that I ate. How come you're not drinking? What's wrong with you? How come you don't want dessert? And I was like trying to explain, like, I'm trying to get over my digestive issues. A lot of them I didn't even bother to share about the food addiction because they wouldn't have understood. And I was still superficial and knew that therefore I was attracting superficial men. So
Right.
we have to
Yeah.
know we're a mirror. So if you're with someone who really doesn't understand you and is not going to be supportive of you, I don't think that's probably the right person for you to be with. Now, maybe there's certain things like, when I have a body talk session or I have an energy session, and there's certain things I'll share with my boyfriend, but there's certain things I'm like, oh, do I really need to share that with him? I don't know. It doesn't matter, right? Like, but it's just like you should be able to be yourself.
Yeah,
And
like there's a
so,
time and
yeah,
place like for things as they come up with a relationship or a friendship or
yeah,
whatever. Like a big thing that I've realized is that like okay, for example, like on Instagram, if someone makes this like really vulnerable post and makes it like a really big deal and they're like I have something to like to confess, like I've been dealing with suicidal thoughts or I've been dealing with an eating disorder, and they make it into this like big production,
yeah,
then that energy of self-judgment and like condemning yourself actually will be mirrored back to you, and it's like
yeah.
then people will like look at it as like a big deal, like oh my god, I had no idea and this and that, and I didn't want to do that on my Instagram, so I just literally started posting stuff and just like started talking about my eating disorder in like the most normal way, and
Mhm.
nobody even cared. like like no well keep people cared, but like nobody was like, "Oh my god, Gab, I had no idea." It's like
Yeah,
when you go into a conversation like okay, no big deal, like everybody has their problems,
yeah.
or even using like humor. Like I love not making fun of myself, but like I'll be the first person to like kind of make fun of like, yep, I went to the bathroom 20 times today, how are you doing? And kind of just like it's not a big deal, and then when you go into it that way, the person won't feel uncomfortable, and they won't feel like they have to make you feel better about it, and they won't make you feel like there's something wrong with it. um it is challenging when you're meeting a new person who you're like interested in, because it is embarrassing, some of these digestion issues
Mm-hmm.
and ways that we eat. But I think what you're saying is, it's just, if you can just be real with them, and they respond in a way that's like condemning you, then that's a huge sign of showing where they're at in their spiritual practice, or
Yeah.
their, just their good person practice. Like, if
Yeah.
if somebody comes to you and they're like, I'm struggling with anxiety attacks and this weird phobia of, I don't know, like something so weird that, like, you couldn't even wrap your head around it. If somebody were to like say, well, I don't know what you want me to do, like, and turn it around on them, then that's pretty shitty, and that shows you where they are. So I mean, I really find your story nice, because at first you said that it was really challenging, but then you guys did the work on your own selves and on your own awareness, and then it was just smooth.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is when you're with that person, you grow together, you want to you challenge each other in a loving way because you know that that person is open to that, and that this is the thing. The feminine, we have that feminine energy, and we actually, as we shift and grow, our partner will shift and grow. If they're really wanting to be in the relationship. And I think that's something so powerful, because the more deeply I spiritually grow, it's like my boyfriend, he just like does it right away. I'm like, wow, you're so good at this. Like, and here I am like doing all the self-care and like healing. And he's just like, yeah, I totally did that in 5 minutes. Like, I connected with source and did this and
Hmm.
did that. And like, it's
Oh
just
my
so
God,
cool. Right.
what a
And so,
dream.
yeah, so I just think it's but you attract that when you first create that for yourselves and you can sit in it solidly. The reason we attract people that then judge us is because there's some part of us that's still judging ourselves and not fully accepting. So if that's happening for you and you're going, well, I am the spiritual person and I'm, trying to overcome my food addiction and I love myself, but I keep attracting very judgmental partners or friends, you gotta look in and go, have I fully surrendered and fully love and accept who I am? Or is there still a resistance? Because it's a mirror. Take awareness and take a notice of those other people. And your friend circle, your circle of people who are closest to you may very well fully change or drastically change when you're really working on yourself, because it's a different reflection. You're attracting different things, right? Like most of the people I was friends with when I was going through all of my stuff, I'm not friends with anymore. I have new friends, right? Who are more
Yeah.
in tune, more loving, more respectful, more spiritual. It's not about perfection, but it's just, I don't want to surround myself with self-sabotaging people. I want people who are taking responsibility and ownership and doing their work and being respectful of themselves, right? And not energy sucker vampires. Like, I don't want to surround myself with anyone like that either. And so I think that's just so important to be aware of your environment. And if you don't like it, go inside and go, okay, what within me is attracting this and how do I want to change it?
Yeah. I mean, oh my God, that really hits hard with me, because what I just felt was, I mean, I'm the queen of friend cleanse at this point in my life, and I'm fully okay with being isolated and in my, Saturn return and doing all this stuff, which is fine because we're all in a quarantine anyways. But what you were just saying with, like, surrounding yourself with people who basically, raise your vibration or lower it, that is why I was binging and doing drugs and at my heaviest weight when I was, in my early 20s, because I was surrounded with people who weren't necessarily like healthy. I mean, yeah, they were all very fun, but, constantly doing drugs or drinking or partying isn't necessarily going to like set me up for success.
Yeah.
And that string of physically feeling like shit, emotionally feeling like shit, because I kept attracting, um, dudes who were, like every relationship that I was in from age 18 to 29, or if it was just like a fling or whatever, was rooted and created from drugs or alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, you know, whenever I was in that kind of phase of drinking and doing drugs, the eating was also not in a good place. So
Yeah.
I can definitely say that, like, when you do clean up your friend circles and when you do clean up just the people you're around, and maybe that means really having a small circle, which can sound depressing, but really it's not, because then you get the opportunity to just be with your energy and clean up your energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then once your energy is cleaned up, then people of a better energy will come through.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great because you can use it as a check-in, like as you're shifting and you observe who's around you, don't judge it, but you can just you'll start to see, wow, I'm attracting this person and they're not stealing my energy and they don't want to go out and get loaded either. They don't want to, enable each other to go and just like eat junk food together. Wow, we want to just go to the walk for a walk or go to the mountains or like make a healthy meal together. Like it's so great to see the shift in the behavior.
Yeah. Um, for people who like are struggling right now in this moment in time with, night eating or binging, what would be your go-to kind of practices or anything that really really helps your clients? It can be practices, and then I kind of want to ask you about some supplements and herbal stuff.
So I'm going to focus on self-care and mindset stuff just because with supplements and herbs, I find, if someone's on medications or there's just certain things that can be
Hmm.
um, like misaligned if you don't have all the information. So I think one of the first most important things is to understand, you know, what kind of relationship do I have with food? What kind of thoughts do I have about my body? And what physical symptoms am I having? So, this could be a great journal entry for you. And you don't have to go like super deep in if you don't want to. If you want to, great. But just to start to get an understanding. And so, for instance, if you're struggling with bloating, something that I could say is start with a peppermint tea or a ginger tea or add, fresh ginger to some of your food to calm inflammation, right? That would be a simple add in. If it's triggers, if it's emotional eating triggers, start to make a list. When you notice you feel triggered to eat, can you pull out your journal and go, and ask yourself, what's triggering me right now? Well, I'm stressed. Well, I'm tired. I didn't drink enough water today. I ate sugar yesterday, and so now I'm craving it even more. Because the more awareness you can have around whether it's that or you're triggered to drink or, you're triggered to be critical of your body, just starting to make some notes and build some awareness for yourself is really going to help. If you've been struggling for a really long time and you've tried a lot of different things and you're like, that just isn't going to cut it for me, I would highly suggest that you get support and a deep level of support because I think there's a time and a place where that is really the answer for us and it's the most empowering thing we can do because we don't understand how to change it and all the layers and it can take getting support to really understand the bigger picture.
Hmm.
Self-care is huge and making ourselves a priority is very important. I've chatted with a lot of women lately who are not making themselves a priority because they're so consumed with social media and the news, which is making them feel even worse and draining their energies. And then
Yep.
triggering the self sabotage that they're like, they just feel horrible. And I'm going, have compassion for yourself. However, are you putting your energy into things that are really in alignment with your greatest good? No, you're not, right? Yes, I get it's important to be informed. However, watching it 24/7 and being on social media 24/7 is not going to help you feel better. So,
Right.
setting very strong boundaries with technology right now, like, do you need to watch the news every day? I doubt it. You know,
Yeah.
maybe
Take
once
a
a
break.
week, take a break. This is the intent I've set. If there's something that I really need to know about what's going on right now, it will come to me in a positive manner. I'm not going
Right.
looking for it. I'm not reading about it. And I have some great sources that I personally follow based off of what I believe is going on, that help me see, the outcome of this in a much more uplifting way. But I think boundaries with technology, limit your time on your phone, and spend that time doing different kinds of self care. Because people go, I don't have time, and I'm like, well, if you stop the technology stuff and only spend 15 or 20 minutes a day on social media, if you can, I get if you have a business, you have to spend more, but then you have that time limit and then you stop and you go, wow, now all of a sudden I have 4 hours to do self-care. Like that's a lot of time, like get out
It's a
into
game
nature for a
changer.
walk, get out
Yeah.
your journal, do some deep breathing, get into meditation. There's no perfect way to do it. Just sit in a comfortable position, close your eyes and put some relaxing music on. Get into EFT tapping. That's a very powerful technique. Take a bath and throw a bunch of Epsom salts in there to ground yourself. Essential oils are super good for your mood and your vibration. Talk to a friend, listen to an empowering podcast, journal, color, do something that makes you laugh. I think it's so important that we disconnect from all this heavy stuff and that we go inside and do some, connecting with ourselves, clear energy. Like I clear energy every day. My list is so big of things I clear now. However, it always feels so good to clear it. And with the dynamic of energy we have right now, it's so important that we're not carrying around a bunch of stuff from the collective, because
Yeah,
that can then make you feel overwhelmed and then trigger you to emotionally eat. And it's not even any of your stuff. Right. So
totally.
this is a very
Yeah.
powerful time to reconnect with yourself or deepen the connection you have with yourself. I have spiritually awoken tenfold in the last 8 weeks compared to the last 10 years.
Oh my
And
God. Yeah.
it's been like, I've been craving it, and it's so cool to see what's happening as I'm focusing on that. And so everybody can do that. Everybody can gain the freedom that they seek with the behaviors that they have, and get to this space. You just have to be willing to lovingly, acknowledge that there's some work to be done, but just do it at your pace.
Right. Like man, I mean, sometimes it just really requires us to force ourselves to, like, it's not about the food, and if you, obviously we have to eat every day, we're going to eat,
Hmm.
but for a moment, if we could just walk away and do whatever tool resonates with you, whether that's the journaling or the walk around the block,
Hmm.
and just say, can I step away from this like binge, this like about to be binge or whatever, and say, okay, I'll let myself binge in 30 minutes, and if I still want to binge, then I'll binge. But usually, it'll kind of taper off, and the energy has changed. And
Hmm.
I'm huge on journaling. I mean, I created a journaling workshop, and it's with like audio meditations and stuff like that,
Cool.
because that's what helped me get through the darkest of times when I became clean and sober. And actually, I'm donating every order the rest of this month to like organizations and foundations for what's going on in the world right now with
Nice.
anti-racism and stuff like that. But what you said about therapy, like, because some people um, will be like, I've tried all those things or whatever. There's always that person who's like, yeah, I've tried the walk around a block, or I've tried journaling, or blah blah blah. Um, Therapy is, it's a huge component of healing. And sometimes you really need someone outside of your own life to talk to. And, I go to therapy 2 times a week. It's virtual, but it's nice because I use BetterHelp, but you can also like send them messages and type journal entries, so it's not like you're actually writing the journal entry, so typing kind of feels a little bit better or easier. So I don't know, that's, if anybody's listening and they really just need someone to vent to, you don't have to just do it audio or video. You can actually like write journal entries through the week, and the therapist kind of gets back to you. But therapy is huge. Do you still go to therapy?
I never went to therapy, so I fully healed this on my own. I went to a psychologist once and had the most horrible experience. And after sharing with her everything that was going on, she essentially just said to me, well, just stop driving to the store to buy the food and you need to love yourself. And so there was a massive space of
Wow.
judgment. It was very
Jesus.
disempowering for me and felt very disrespectful. And so for me, I don't think everyone necessarily needs therapy. The key is that we pick a person who we feel that can support us, that we have a safe space, a judgment-free
Mhm.
zone, and then nothing will be forced upon us that does not feel comfortable, or nothing that will trigger us. It has to be respected that this is a very vulnerable state and that these people are easily triggered to shut down. And in order to help them, you don't want to trigger them to shut down. So therefore, you've got to feel comfortable. So really feel out that person's personality and energy, and read about them and listen if they have a podcast or whatever it is, and really tune in before you commit to them, because if you're going to dread whoever you're seeing because you just feel like you're going to be judged or you're going to just be shut down, it's not going to get you where you want to go. I also
Oh no.
think that if you've
Yeah.
been seeing somebody for a while and nothing's changing, that person's just probably not giving you the support that you need. So don't be afraid to change.
Exactly.
I've had a
Yeah.
lot of
Like,
women come to me who are doing therapy and then they quit it because it's not doing anything. And then what I do helps. I'm not saying like I'm the saving grace, because I do have some clients who also, they do both. They come and work with me and they do that too. And that's totally fine. But the key is to get the support that you need that's really going to get you where you want to go.
right, and tailor it to what you need. And
Yeah.
there's no problem changing therapists.
No.
I've changed therapists twice already, and I'll change again if I feel like they aren't, because I'm the kind of person, I'm from New Jersey. I have no filter. I am not like, all love and light. I need someone who's kind of like brutally honest and challenges me in a way. And if I have a therapist who's too like, you know, just too light and you know what I mean? Like I
Mhm.
need someone who really challenges me and yeah, like
You need to be
there's no
challenged.
yeah,
The person who's helping you isn't doing their job if they're just there to be your friend. Like, I love my clients, but I'm there to lovingly stand for them for their health and to overcome emotional eating. And that means also lovingly challenging them, because the ego is creates a lot of resistance, right? Around wanting to do the work. So that's so important. But that they also feel safe and supported. And I think it's also important to not just seek out like just talking about your feelings, and also dig into like, why do I have the health issues that I do? Why am I bloated? Why do I suspect I have hormone imbalances and I want to figure that out. That's why it's so important to, whether it's one person that can help you with all of that, or it's like you're seeing someone and talking to someone about some stuff and going and seeing someone about other stuff, like build your team, right?
right.
That's so
Yes, I love
important.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Oh my God. That just made me happy that you said that
Hmm.
because I've been thinking like I've created my own little team
Yeah.
like during this quarantine and it's been really great to do that. So we're getting close to the end here and I wanted to ask you on a little bit of a lighter note question. What is your favorite, thing to cook during this time of quarantine or just in general, when you're at home and what's your favorite meal to cook at home or it could be takeout or it could be anything. And what's like one of the favorite things that you've been doing in this time that you have alone?
So to make I think one of my boyfriend and mine's favorite is I like to make homemade tacos, but
Mm,
we don't use we so I'll make like the beef with the salsa and like shredded goat cheese and like peppers and cucumbers and lettuce and
yum.
guacamole and cashew cheese, and it's so good. So we always look forward to that. And then our favorite place to go and get takeout or eat it. It's actually an hour away in the mountains, but it's a nice drive. So we go to our favorite restaurant, Wild Orchid. They do like everything's gluten free, and they do the best gluten free ginger beef, and it's so good.
Ooh,
And then what I've really connected with is I've found some really powerful meditations from a documentary that my boyfriend and I watched, Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and he talks about connecting with extraterrestrials. If you guys believe in that, if you don't, that's totally fine. But he has some really powerful meditations on his app that he created, and I've been sitting in our infrared sauna doing those on the weekends. And I have to tell you, my
oh my
connection to
God.
source feels deeper. I'm manifesting more quickly. My vibration is higher. I've had some very powerful healings happen. And so
I believe it.
it's been incredible. So
You have a sauna? I'm so jealous right now.
it's so nice. Infrared, it's so great for gentle detox. And
Yeah, I love the sauna.
it's our little healing box. We call it our healing box. So yeah.
I was using saunas. I mean, I've been using saunas for years, but when um the hot yoga studio closed
Mm,
recently, I actually got one of those sauna blankets and I thought
awesome.
it was going to be like super gross, but it actually works really well for the time being. So,
Awesome.
yeah. So where can everybody find you on the interwebs and all that?
So you can find me on my website at amberproof.ca. I have a free emotional eating quiz if you are wondering if you are struggling. And I also offer a 30-minute complimentary body freedom call. So if you're wanting
Cool.
to connect and talk more about your relationship with food, your body image, your health struggles, anything else that's going on that is just you're feeling like I want to get some support with, we can chat and talk more about, what's possible. And I can provide information as far as how I may be able to support you. You can find my podcast is called the No Sugarcoating Podcast on all podcast apps. I have a private Facebook group called Women Choosing Body Freedom, which you can just go and search for that title. And then I'm on Instagram, and my handle is my name, which is Amber Romaniuk, Romaniuk.
Perfect. And I'm going to put all that in the show notes, obviously. Cool. Thank you so much for coming on. It was really awesome meeting you
Well,
over
thank you so
voice.
much. Thank you so much for
And
having me. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
all right. Thank you guys for listening to that episode of The Vibe Within. If you need to contact her, her information is in the show notes. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you know where to find me. And if you'd like to support the podcast, please subscribe, rate, review, or share this episode with a friend or a family member. I'm going to leave you with the rest of this song by Zender. It's called Nearly Home, and it's a chill step, relax, kind of steady vibe. Enjoy.